Welcome to this week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca Caro share their biggest secrets on how to unleash your hidden potential and plot a new course for real results on the water and off. Now, on to the show.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro and today we're going to be talking about crew alignment. What does it take? How to best do it? Different situations calling for different needs and different ways of doing it. Fundamentally, what I want to talk about today is, should you be focusing on your whole crew or just an individual? I'm obviously excluding single scullers at this stage in the proceedings. Now, in Masters clubs, we all know that often it is the case that we have a crew of mixed abilities. Some of us are more or less skillful, more or less experienced, and it can feel very challenging if you're the least experienced person in the group and you feel that all of the attention is focused on you. So when are the times when you should be focusing on the whole crew, and when are the times when it helps to focus on the individual? Now, this is my experience as a coach and an athlete. The very first time I ever experienced whole crew coaching, I had been rowing for years, and every single coach I had had up to that point used to get us doing workouts, and then they would call out individuals and tell us to change things like swearing early and so on. It was a complete revelation to me when this coach came and got the whole crew to focus on doing the same thing at the same time. And the thing that I found really refreshing about this was the fact that you didn't feel picked on and you really felt a sense of common endeavour. We were all trying to do this thing. Yes, if we analysed it, some of us were possibly doing it a bit more skillfully than others. But the fact was we were all working on the same thing at the same time. And I think that's a great reflection of how people learn to row, and how in our pursuit of the perfect stroke, we all know that we're never going to get there. And there are times when it's really useful to go back to basics and focus on how you make the rowing stroke work for you. So today I want to go through 5 situations where I think there is an advantage for choosing to focus on the whole crew or the individual. And I'll explain what they are and why I think this is helpful. So if you're the person who's doing the calls, if you're a coxswain, if you're a coach, I hope that this brings something to your tool bag of tricks that you can put into practice in your next outing. Let's start with warming up. You do it every single outing, whether you're a pick drill lover or a go straight off into full slide lover. It's a fact that we're all warming up together. We need to do an on-water warm-up before we're ready to do hard strokes. For me, when you're warming up, it's all about the outcome. And the outcome is, can we refresh our memory of doing the movement of rowing or sculling? And the whole crew needs to get more physically active and warm so that we're ready to do the rest of the workout. So that's the goal of your warm-up. I know a lot of athletes, and I'm going to include myself in this, don't row well when I'm first in the boat. And I need that warm-up in order to loosen up my muscles so that I can begin to swing more. Particularly for myself, it's a backswing is something that I'm a little bit cautious about. When I'm not warm, I don't want to extend my back too much. And then as I get more warm, I don't know, maybe my hips get more mobile. I'm not quite sure what happens, but I certainly feel a bit more confident going through a wider range of movement. So my take on the warm-up and whole crew versus individual, that this is a whole crew thing. We are all trying to get warmed up We each have our own individual focuses. However, I will say that I think that there is a case for having focus points. When I'm coaching, and it doesn't matter if I'm doing a learn to row class or working with really experienced athletes, I like to call for what I call an individual focus. This means it'll be one particular part of the stroke, and it might be, right, let's focus on separating, getting the arms straight on the first bit of the recovery, and then following with the body lean forwards. We have a phrase for that. We use the word separation, so that I like very few syllables when I'm calling things from inside the boat in order to conserve my breath. And so a focus point can be used to enable everyone in the crew to check their own movement. It might be blades tips down to the water at the catch, in which case, you might want to turn your head, have a look at your sculls or your oars and see what's actually happening. It might be staying leg driven. It might be all sorts of different things, squaring early. We all know what they are. But the focus point brings everyone together at one marker in the cyclical stroke cycle, so that alignment, which is really what we're working on here, can be made to happen for everybody at the same point in time. Before you can do this successfully, however, you need to know what are the static positions in the rowing stroke. Sitting at the finish, arms away, bodies over, 1/4 slide, half slide, 3/4 slide, full slide, and then through the power phase, the initiation with the legs, then the blending of the legs into the back and the back into the arms. If you don't know those, and if you don't have a common understanding of what they are, this isn't going to work using focus points. Our second area is doing drills and exercises. It's a classic rowing technique, also very good for a warm-up, but let's isolate one part of a stroke and practice it, and then practice combining that into the main full stroke. Or let's do an exaggeration drill where we're overdoing something in order to ensure that we can pull that into our general pattern of rowing. Now, when you're learning a drill for the first time, and this morning we did a really lovely drill working on the second half of the power phase, it's important that this is a whole crew thing, in my view. Everybody learns the drill, everyone refreshes their memory of the drill, we practice it. In my coaching, I generally find you need to do a drill 3 times during an outing in order that people feel confident doing it. They know what's coming up, and then they don't have to think closely about how they're doing the drill. They can start to observe their own movements and see how well they are executing each part of it. And you need to get to that sort of mental condition of being able to observe yourself and your own movements in order that the drill can be fully successful. If you're worrying about actually how you do the drill, you haven't got the brain space to do that as well as observe yourself. So while we're learning a drill, this has to be whole crew. Everybody is learning at the same time or refreshing their memory, and we're all in it together trying to do this part of the rowing stroke. Before I go on to the next do's and don'ts, I want to remind everybody that we have our Older Athlete and Aging Conference coming up. It's on the 14th of November in the Northern Hemisphere. It's on the 15th in New Zealand and Australia. You can find out more at fastermastersrowing.com/older-athlete-aging. Our 3 speakers are Volker Nolter, Jim Dietz, and Derek Motz, plus myself. 4 speakers, can't count. Tickets are on sale now, and we very much hope you'll join us. we've had a fantastic response to ticket sales already. So that's pretty exciting from my point of view, but it's going to be a really great occasion. That's the older athlete and aging. So our third do's and don'ts is again about drills, but this time it's about when we're repeating the drill. As I said earlier, you want to do it several times during a single workout. When you're repeating a drill, you already know how to do it. You have some confidence that you're doing the right thing. And I think this is the moment to move to an individual focus. Is each person making the movement the way you want to? And so calling people out and helping them to focus on the part of the drill where they're not quite in line with everybody else or with how the drill is done is particularly useful. And remember here that when you're doing the calls, it's sometimes useful to tell people how to make a change. So as an example, you might want to have everyone focused on getting the blade tips down to the water so that when you come to the placement, putting the oar in the water, the underside of your blade is, a few millimeters above the surface of the water, just immediately prior to fully lifting the handle and burying the blade. So you might say early catches or put your catches in sharper or sharper catches. But actually, I find it's often helpful to focus on how to make an earlier, sharper catch. And so you might say, lift the handle with your outside hand, or using your thumbs in sculling, push the handles away from you and upwards until the lower half of your blade maybe clips the water, which is sometimes called backsplash, so that you've got a movement or a timing point that you might want people to focus on. So start to lift your handles as they go over your feet so that people can look down, look at their feet, see their handles and notice at what point they start to lift the handles upwards as they come up the final bit of the slide. So think about both the effect that you want and the movement that you want. And then depending on the crew, decide whether it's worthwhile saying how to do that movement. Now, of course, if you're in a crew that rows together regularly, you don't need to be told all the time how to do it. But if you're not executing it successfully, that could be a useful way of helping the individual get in line with what everyone else is doing. My fourth crew alignment do's and don'ts is in pieces. So when you're doing a particular workout, whether it's sprints or long distance, this I think is a whole crew situation. We are all trying to do our 10 minutes with rate changes, whatever you're doing. And so we all need to have a common mental focus, and we're all trying to do it together. So whether it's calls that focus on ensuring you're on the right stroke rate, whether it's calls that ensure that you're moving off the back together, these are things which I would call focus points, just like we talked about earlier. And the point here is that everybody's doing their best. We are all trying to do the workout that has been specified. And so having a singular focus within the crew, whether it's on the power, whether it's on the recovery, whether it's on some other finesse, that's all really useful because it allows everyone to feel that we're doing it together. I do like to keep at least 10 strokes between every focus call because in my experience, rowers aren't very good at multitasking or thinking about two things at once. So, whatever your call is, call it. Make sure that the crew is doing it so you can feel the change or see the change. And then don't say anything for at least 10 strokes so that is the only thing that everybody is thinking about and trying to do together. However, there is an exception to this. If you think we haven't made the change that you want, call it a second time and say, I want more, or that didn't work. Let's re-emphasize it. And then it just sort of gives us time to get on with what it is that you want us to do. Now, the fifth and final focus for crew alignment is when you're moving from a drill into doing a piece, a workout. This is the opportunity, because you're trying to take a technical focus, which you've learned in the drill, into a situation where it's much harder to do because you're working hard. Maybe you're at a higher stroke rate in that piece. I think this is a opportunity for a little more individual focus. So everyone needs to understand that in this piece, we're going to be trying to do the thing we practiced in the drill. And we're going to be trying to make the movement correctly in a more challenging situation. Everything is harder at firm pressure. I think we all know that. And firm pressure and high rates, it gets harder and harder to be accurate and consistent. And so this is the moment where you can do a little bit of individual coaching, calling people out who are a little bit late on the placement if you're, got a catch focus that you're working on, looking at the size of people's puddles, and you can see how hard they're working relative to each other. So these are moments where I think it is appropriate, if you framed it up correctly, then to move back to your crew alignment at an individual level. So whole crew or individual focus and attention, it's up to you. But I do encourage everyone just to kind of think these things through and decide what you think is right for this situation. And then based on what happens, you can talk about it after the outing or between the pieces and say, did that work? Was that helpful? Did we feel the change that we were trying to make? And of course, that's then your opportunity to work out the best ways that resonate with the whole group that you're working with. I hope this is a fun thing for you to try out during your practices this week. Till next time.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.